Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you all are doing well, and if you're new here, you haven't seen me or know what I do, or if you have subscribed but you haven't watched any of my videos, hi! My name is Caitlin Elliott and I cover true crime cases on Tuesdays and Fridays with my more vintage cases occurring on Fridays. In my last video, we talked about the newly solved case of Little Miss Nobody, who was identified in 2022. It was March 15th of 2022 as Sharon Lee Gallegos, and that was such a tragic and heartbreaking case, but I'm actually truly happy that it's been finally solved. So for today's case, I thought I would discuss about a case I heard actually through Google when I was researching to find some cases to cover, and I came across this one and I was like, oh, you know, so it was just very interesting to me. So it actually occurs in the state that I live in, and today I'm going to be discussing the hostage situation that took place in Honolulu, Hawaii. This case takes place on February 6th of 1991 in Sand Island, Hawaii. And for those who don't know where Sand Island is, it's actually a beach and beach town that is right nearby the city of Honolulu. So it's kind of like a little suburb. From Sand Island's location, you can actually see the outline of downtown Honolulu. Honolulu is actually home to a few military bases, including the most notorious one, you know, Pearl Harbor. And it has a zoo, it has hotels, and lots of beaches. Honolulu is also home to a local waterproofing facility called the Seal Masters of Hawaii. And they provide paintings, coatings, and restoration products of bathtubs and showers. So at this local waterproofing facility on February 6th of 1991, there was a very furious former employee who made his way into the office. The former employee's name was John Miranda, and as he pulled into the lot, he eventually parked his car and just started staring at the facility. So John was actually, like I said, he was a former employee, and he had been previously fired from the facility 6 months prior. It's unsure why John was actually fired, but I'm sure it's for a pretty good reason. He started walking up the steps towards the facility that actually led into the offices where the workers were at doing their job. Once he made it inside, there was actually another worker who had shown up to do his job, and he pulled on the door to try to get inside. So this was bizarre to him because as he's pulling on it, he realizes that the door was locked, and the door is never locked on a day that is open. Tom McNeil, the worker, he begins to knock really, really loud on the door so that anyone inside could hear him. This was when the door swings open, and out walks John Miranda, and he is armed with a shotgun. Imagine just trying to go to your job, just to do your job, and all of a sudden, you know, you've got a former employee there, armed with a shotgun, and you have no idea what the hell is going on. He grabbed Tom McNeil and pulls him inside while snapping at him to get the hell inside, quoted. This was when John Miranda starts to round up all of the workers inside of the building. He then takes them into one room while he walked around the said office room while toting his shotgun. And after a while of pacing, John directed them all inside an office room for asking them for $20,000 cash. So the owner of the company, he complied, and he began to prepare the ransom to be sent in full to John. The company's owner called his wife eventually to inform her of what was going on, for which she pleaded to him to not give John Miranda the money and to call the police. Either the owner or someone else actually does end up calling the Honolulu Police Department. For those who do not know, the Honolulu Police Department doesn't just cover the city of Honolulu, but it actually covers the entire island of Oahu, which is considered to be Honolulu County. So the HPD ends up being informed about the hostage situation in the waterproofing facility. And they start to quickly go towards where the hostages were being held at to eliminate the crisis. Meanwhile, back at the waterproofing facility, the hostages are terrified for their lives as John paces back and forth between the hostages while clutching his shotgun close to his chest. To the witnesses inside, the hostages, it seemed like he was just really stunned, and he didn't actually think he was going to be able to get this far. He didn't know what to do. He was like, oh, I've got them now. What do I do? You know, he was just trying to come up with a plan on the fly. So it was at this moment that John looks out the window, and he actually notices that HPD is pulling up to the office building. The police at this point, they were unaware that the building actually held multiple offices inside the building. So there was different like facilities, like a Staples was there, or like a Office Max would have been there. So it was just very difficult for them to figure out exactly where the building was. The police surrounded the office building, and they start to wait for John to come out and surrender to them. When the police arrive, he was absolutely just infuriated. The police were showing up at the facility. He was just pissed. So pretty soon the SWAT team, they actually start showing up at the facility as well with different patrol cars, and this was done in a way to help save the captives. John, good old John, he actually pulls out his gun and fires at the patrol officers in an attempt to actually kill or wound them. He ends up shooting out all of the windows, so all the glass, you know, is flying out, and you know, they just blown out everywhere, so it's completely open, and he is able to have free range to move his gun around and shoot as he pleases. The SWAT team were very confused, and they didn't know where everyone was being held captive at. No one had told them what was going on. They just knew that there was a hostage situation. Inside the facility, there was mass confusion and hysteria because no one at this point really knew what was going on. And it was at this point that John shuts the blinds so that the people outside couldn't see the others inside during the situation. John ends up rounding up all the hostages and facing them to line up in a row while holding his gun towards them, terrifying the captives. No one truly knew at this point if John was going to shoot or not, which had to have been like extremely horrifying to have your life, you know, at the risk of this guy's hands, and you don't know exactly if he's going to shoot or if this gun was just for show. Meanwhile, outside, the SWAT truck and their commanders were a whole block away, zooming as fast as they could to reach the facility. At this point, no one knew if the captives were still alive at this point, and no one knew what was to expect whenever they had arrived. I seriously cannot even imagine how everyone must have been feeling at that point. I would have been just horrified out of my mind. 6 to 8 negotiators actually arrived at the office building in Honolulu to talk to John. For those who do not know, the definition of a negotiator means to obtain or bring about discussion, or to find a way over or through a difficult path. And this had to have been done to calm down John so he wouldn't, you know, kill everybody. So good old John over here, he decides to find a phone, and I'm assuming it's just a random phone from inside the office, to call a local radio station, and this station had a radio show. And he called this particular show that was the most famous radio show in all of Honolulu at the time. A lot of people actually listened to it, and I'm not talking about just in Honolulu in general, but I mean all over the island listened to it. So I'm thinking this is why he wanted to call them, is because he wanted a lot of people to listen to what in the world was going on. So he calls them, and when he's finally on air, John Miranda starts telling the station that he is holding people hostage at the building. John, he then starts informing them that people are going to die. And just a reminder, you know, this was, Ding Dong over here was still on air, so he's just telling everybody, you know, I'm, have all these captives here, I'm holding them all hostage, I'm at such and such place. You know, he just really wanted to be famous, and he wanted everyone to know about what in the world was going on. When the radio station originally had heard him saying that he was going to kill the people inside, the radio station, they cut it off of the live air, but made sure to speak privately to John to try to calm him down. So he actually had a radio in there with him, and when he heard that they took him off of the live, he flipped out. He was furious, and he kept asking over and over again, is this live? Is this live? Am I live? And he wanted people to know what was going on and what he was doing. It was around this time that the DJ started attempting to calm John down, trying to remain like calm and reason with him that he needed to stop what he was doing and just not do it anymore. Unfortunately, nothing that anybody was saying was working, and he just kept repeating that he had been screwed over due to him being fired. He blamed the people at his workplace for getting fired, and that his former employees were going to end up paying for the consequences of him getting terminated. And what was really, really bizarre to me was that John had actually been fired 6 months ago. So they had been fired 6 months prior to this. So this would have been, you know, it would have been around like 1990, maybe early 1991, depending on like the time and what was everything going on. It would have been like mid-1990 actually. And he would have had plenty of time to go out there and get a new job. But instead, he wasted 6 months planning this whole hostage situation. So, like I said, I'm not sure why he didn't even try to find a job, but we can't change that now. That's neither here nor there. It's already happened. At this moment, nobody from HPD, Honolulu Police Department, for those who do not know, knew that John had actually called the radio station and that he was going to, he explained, go out with a bang. Which I'm sure what you think. It's sure what you're thinking in your head. Go out with a bang. He's probably thinking about he wants to kill himself. At this point, it began to seem very obvious that John was planning a mass murder-suicide. It's possible that he could have been mentally disturbed and him getting fired just caused him to snap. But of course, this was all speculation. It was 100% proven that he did have, you know, a mental illness, and this termination caused him to basically just lose his mind. This is just theories. John then proceeds to shoot his first victim of the hostage crisis, violently blowing off half of his left leg. And I'm talking about the lower half where the feet were. He blew that completely off with his shotgun, which if you don't know, if you stand close enough to someone and you use a shotgun and you shoot them, like I said, close enough, it can blow, you know, flesh off. It can make them lose limbs. It could make them get decapitated. I mean, in the Civil War, they did that same thing. They had different types of guns. They would get close to their bodies, shoot them, body parts, flesh flying everywhere. The victim then proceeded to fall onto the ground and just started to scream on the top of his lungs in pain. God, I can't even begin to imagine the type of, like, the amount of pain that this guy must have been in. It had to have been excruciating. So that was when everyone began to realize that John Miranda was not just, you know, being crazy and holding them all captive. He wanted to kill them all. So everyone just starts, like, panicking and losing their shit at this moment. For the Hawaii SWAT team, they were absolutely shocked and terrified because this was actually their very first mission of theirs where shots were actually fired. This began to send everybody in a panic because no one knew what to do, especially the people inside, because the way he was acting was just, he was just firing willy-nilly. You know, he didn't care what he hit, what he didn't hit. He just wanted to kill people. He just wanted to go out and, you know, have this revenge. So a lot of people believed at this time with him shooting like that, this whole hostage situation was in fact a murder-suicide mission. Which, if you don't know what that means, John Miranda had no intention of leaving there alive. He begins to act extremely impulsive and seemed to have no plan whatsoever with his hostage situation. Once John was actually in the hallway with Tom McNeil, a worker, he took a roll of duct tape and wrapped it around the man's leg that had been shot off to help and make sure that the blood loss was not going to be that bad. The man who had been shot, his name was Guy George, and he had began to bleed just profusely from his gunshot wound. John begins to pace back and forth between the hostages before he then just led everyone out into the hallway where everyone noticed how the main office door had been shut. John noticed his hostages staring at the main office door that was shut, and it struck him as odd because he just assumed that everyone had already been outside in the hallway with him. And he starts to go towards the door and he opens it up, and inside of there is where, you know, Guy George had been laying. But as he opened the door, he realized that Guy George was not there, and this kind of freaked him out. He's like, you know, where did he go? He was literally just here. So this really confused him. What had actually happened was that Guy George was able to somehow crawl out of the window of the facility, and he jumped down. This was the one that had been shot in exchange between John Miranda and the SWAT team. He was able to go out that window, fall onto the ground, and he had managed to crawl his way towards the police department. John, he held a shotgun towards the remaining workers and told them that Guy George had just escaped and was on his way to find some help. He begins to order them to all tie each other up, and he made his hostages do so because he did not want to risk putting his shotgun down. He was like, if I put the shotgun down, they're going to come towards me, grab the shotgun, and then kill me. So he didn't want to do that. John wanted them to go from the office room and line up by the door in such a chaotic way that really made his hostages believe that he clearly had no idea what in the world he was doing. He was just, impulsive and doing whatever the hell he wanted to at this point. He had no literal set plan. John then orders all of the hostages to duct tape the shotgun to Tom McNeil's head along with John's finger on the trigger. So they were duct taping his finger to the trigger of the gun that was then duct taped to the back of this guy's head. And this was in order to fire and kill Tom McNeil if he needed to. He then orders everyone to walk down the stairs of the office building, which most followed directions and did so, except there was a few hostages who were actually able to escape. They had jumped over some walls of the facility to run away and get help, which most can be considered as a flight or fight moment. You can either fight off the person who is trying to come after you, or you can take off running and get help to save yourself. John really is getting frustrated now, and he attempts to try to regain control of the hostage situation. He's just like, hey, I'm the one that's supposed to be having you guys hostage. You guys aren't supposed to be escaping. This is against my plan. What is going on? He was just losing his mind at this point. He forces Tom McNeil at gunpoint to go up the stairs with him to enter the office building through the side door, because remember, they were outside at this point. So John snaps at Tom to open the door, and as he turns the knob, he twists it, and it was no success. It was actually locked, and the only way he could get it open was that through the inside, and the door was actually locked from the inside, and they're all outside, so basically they're locked out. It turns out that the Honolulu SWAT team had actually locked the door when they had gone inside the facility, so at this point there's no way for them to get back inside. One glance around and John Miranda, he quickly realizes that he is completely surrounded by the SWAT team, and he realizes, oh shit, this is what happened. I'm screwed at this point, So, I know a lot of you people are probably out there, and you're probably thinking, this is the end of the story. He's going to get caught, he's going to get arrested, he's going to go to jail. The end. Yeah, not quite. It's not even there. We're not even close in the slightest to the end of the story. It's going to get more wild, so y'all better be paying attention. So the police, they then inform him that he needs to surrender and drop his weapon. So John, he just tells them, no, I'm not going to drop my weapon. I'm not going to surrender. And then he just kept repeating that people are going to die because of his termination from the facility. He begins to start becoming more and more mentally unhinged as the SWAT team, they attempt to communicate with him. The SWAT team, they actually called the facility's phone, and John brought Tom down from the stairway so Tom could actually answer the phone himself. John begins to ask Tom for thousands of dollars to throw at the people. He wanted to tell them through Tom to give him thousands of dollars in cash so he could throw it out the windows and give it to the people of Honolulu. So Tom then replied that he should give up. It's not worth it. The police told Tom that he should give up, that it's just not worth it, At this point, no, Tom had told John, that to give up, it's not worth it. I'm so sorry. Tom, John, they all sound the same, I'm sorry. At this point, Tom, he is still duct taped to John's gun. And John refuses to give up, and he's constantly saying just, everyone is going to die, people are going to die, everyone's going to die. You know, and it's just, it was crazy. According to the police, the Honolulu police, the situation after that just seemed to just rapidly accelerate and become more and more dangerous. John refused to give up or to let Tom go. And at one point, they both sat down on the steps of the building. And this was the outside steps, obviously. And Tom stated to John, well, he stated to police that John started acting very peculiar. Sorry. Oh, there's a kitty outside. Kitty. Police eventually find out about John's personal life, and that includes the fact that he actually had a child with a woman, and they were no longer together. And this, of course, I'm going to tell you right now, this is not in any way, shape, or form going to be me targeting single mothers, people raising their kids and stuff, because let me just tell you, I applaud you, because I personally could not be a single mother raising all those kids by myself, you know, just one income. Y'all are just, kudos to you. You're some of the, oh shit, don't hit the cat. Sorry. Y'all are some of the strongest people I have literally ever heard of. Just single moms are just so insanely strong. Like, it's just, it blows my mind. So anyways, back to the story. So, John, he had been said to have actually stolen all of this woman's clothing and personal items as a way to threaten his ex into letting him have, letting him see his kid. Like, it was like basically like a whole thing of saying, if you let me see my kid, I'll let you have this stuff back. I'm not giving you this back until you see my kid. You know, this type of, if you pat my back, I'll pat yours, basically, is what he was saying. This type of behavior actually is said to lead to a lot of suicide by cop instances. And it's actually been discussed that that may have actually been John Miranda's whole intention about this whole thing anyways. He just set this whole thing up to have suicide by cop. The police then decide to allow a young man who is actually on the SWAT team to try and talk to John or to calm him down. And it was said that this particular member of the SWAT team was actually good friends with John, and they had actually played basketball together in high school. This friend's name was Michael. And he tried to calm down John by reminding him of the memories that they shared back during playing basketball, whether it was high school or middle school. And this was done in a way to bring back the memories, calm him down, bring back exciting, happy times, bring back the real John Miranda. This ultimately caused John to look at Michael as if he was just a guy who he just owed something to. He basically did not even look at him like he was a person. And this started to make this situation so much worse that the whole negotiation thing with his friend coming up and talking to him had to be completely stopped, and they had to go back to square one and scratch that. It's extremely difficult to actually negotiate with someone who's holding another person hostage, because everything becomes the fault of the negotiator as to what the outcome of the situation would be. And whether or not the hostage will be released alive. What the negotiator says to the person has to be filled and said with caution and such a strong, calm voice that it's able to soothe the person out of their rage and calm them down enough to back off, not have the gun. They will comply to police, get arrested, get charged with all that. So eventually, John he just gets quite annoyed with what the SWAT team were actually doing and saying. So he decided that he was going to start walking up and down the steps, starts walking up and down the streets. And this was all while he still had the gun taped to to Tom. And so he's just parading around with the shotgun taped to Tom at this point. He's actually said to have been walking with Tom directly over to where the police and the armed SWAT team were. And John had actually done this because he knew that they couldn't actually shoot him with Tom there with him. So he knew, like, it was going to be a ha-ha in your face, I got him, and this is the loaded shotgun taped to his head, and I will blow his brains out if you guys try to fire at me. You know, so basically it was just a whole lose-lose situation for the SWAT team. John then loudly announces that he's going to count down from 60, and when he had finished counting, he was going to pull the trigger and blow Tom's brains out. That's what he said. I'm serious, like, I can seriously only imagine how terrifying this must have, I know I keep saying it, just how terrifying this whole situation must have been. Poor Tom was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, you know, just trying to go to work, you know, and John decides that he's going to, you know, lose his mind and go batshit crazy, take him as a hostage, and then threaten to kill him and everybody. So basically, sorry, I need to stretch my leg. So basically, you know, it's just a terrible situation all around. So, like I said, John asked Tom to start a countdown. And Tom refuses to do so. He's like, I'm not counting down for you to kill me. Like, what's wrong with you, dude? What the hell? So this is when John just says, all right, well then I'll do it. So then he starts to loudly count down from 60. Basically saying that he had 1 minute to live. And at this point, like, nobody knows what to do. They're like, okay, shit, he's counting down. He's going to end up blowing this guy's brains out. What do we do? What can we do to ensure that he's not going to kill Tom, but we can solve the whole situation? Because at this point, it just seems like he's going to end up killing him anyways. So someone then actually starts to count backwards from 60. Instead of going 1, 2, 3, they were going 60, 59. So this ended up confusing John Miranda, and he got so upset that he had to keep restarting it. And every time he tried to restart it, someone on the SWAT team started counting back again. And it just started over and over and over again. And at this point, John's just getting more and more pissed off. He's like, look, I'm supposed to be in charge here. He wanted to be the one that was in control of the whole situation. But at this point, it seemed like it was just falling apart because instead of him being the one in charge of the counting, he's now getting confused because there's the whole issue of the SWAT team that are now counting a whole other way, and it's just confusing the shit out of them. Sorry. This was when the SWAT team, they actually began talking to John directly. And this was not at all part of the plan. They were like, why would you do this? This was not supposed to happen. So when they interrupted him, he would lose count, and this would actually cause him to restart yet again. And it was just a constant battle of them trying to calm him down. But then he would be like, look, I'm supposed to be counting down from 60. I'm supposed to kill this guy. So, like I said, it'd be like, he would go 60, 59, 58, and then be like, go ahead and calm down, John Miranda, you'll be fine, you know, just need to calm down, take some deep breaths, and he'd be like, gosh, 60, 59, you know, he just had to start over and over and over again. So at this point, everyone, including the police and the hostage, they were feeling some very, very tense and intense tension in the air, like they all knew that something was just about to happen. Like, it's just building up and up and up. And that's when you know shit's about to hit the fan, essentially. The SWAT team officers realized that this situation is actually really starting to escalate. And there looks like, in order for this to end peacefully, either they had no way for it to make it end peacefully. There was no such way. So, as you all know, if there's a whole hostage situation, you always want it to end peacefully. But for this particular instance, there was not a way to, you know, properly calm him down and have a nice peaceful end to what had happened. Someone was going to end up dying either way. So, this, along with John's threats, they eventually become just too much. And John, he eventually just surrenders to the police. But this proves actually to be a false surrender. And he just refuses to let Tom go at this point. John starts to begin a third countdown, which, goddamn, the first two didn't work. So you're going to start a third one. So now you're starting to count back from 60 a third time. And it was at this point that Tom begins to realize, you know, he needs to do something or his life is going to end. He feels like he is the middleman. He is the reason why nothing is being done. So he actually realized that there was a small gap in between the tape. And this was in order to help him make an escape. So he decided to wait until John actually reached the number 13, the countdown, which was actually the very last thing that John ever said. Tom, when John got to number 13, he actually swung around to face John, and this was so that the shotgun would end up resting on his shoulder. This really surprised John because he was not expecting this. He was like, oh shit, you know, I'm supposed to be in charge of what's going on here? What's happening? So, according to Tom, John ends up shooting and firing off the shotgun, and it actually goes through his shirt sleeve. But luckily, he doesn't get hit. John then fires the weapon again, and they start, you know, struggling. They're starting to fight for it to gain control of the weapon. And a second or a third shot actually goes off, but luckily it doesn't hit anybody and no one is hurt. And this was when Tom, you know, he ducks his head. And it was at this precise moment that he kneeled down to protect himself from John to help save his life. And once he had done this, the SWAT team opened fire and they just kill John right then and there on the spot. Once he realizes that he can escape, Tom, he tries to escape his duct tape prison because remember, he has it everywhere around his head, his back. He tries to, you know, get the gun off his back, but then he realizes the gun that was taped onto his back, that had the trigger right, had the barrel right here, was gone. So he's like, oh shit, where did it go? And that's when Tom realizes that he did not, in fact, escape from the gun, and the gun had actually twisted around with the barrel pointing at his temple. Oh my god, could you imagine? Oh my god, that's horrifying, like seriously. And it could have actually ended quite badly if he would have, like, if John would have kept his finger on the trigger, if he would have been shot and he pulled it, it could have killed Tom right then and there as well. But the SWAT team, they were actually able to safely remove both the gun and the duct tape from Tom, and an ambulance actually arrived later to bring him to the hospital. Thankfully, Tom was all right, and he had actually not been harmed in any type of way that would be considered immediate action for a hospital. He then goes home, and he begins to recover, and has been said to have been diagnosed with PTSD. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, this is probably the end of the story as well. Nope, it gets even more wild. A few days later, after the whole thing had actually settled down and it ended, Tom, he ends up receiving a very unexpected phone call from the Honolulu Police Department. At this point, he had already been open about the situation. He had spoke with them prior about what had happened with the hostage situation. So he was very confused as why they were calling him yet again. So, as it turned out, the HPD had been asking Tom if he had heard from John Miranda's girlfriend and whether or not he knew John Miranda's girlfriend's name. And he goes, no, you know, I don't know her, I've never met her, I don't know her name. And this was when the police actually informed Tom that his girlfriend was in fact a missing person. Just when you thought this couldn't get even more wild, like it's about to take another twist and a turn. The FBI, they start a search on the island of Oahu to find any type of clues where she could have gone. In fact, you know, no one knew exactly where she could have gone. There was no clues, no evidence. They were literally just like, okay, we gotta check everywhere. They didn't even know where to start. They didn't know where to end. They just decided they were going to search the entire island. They didn't even know if she could have, like, flown off the island. We don't know. So they even started going to the Honolulu police, the Honolulu area, to the Honolulu International Airport, and they were checking plane manifests to see if she had flown out on a plane, but nothing ever came from this, and no one knew where she was. Soon there's actually an anonymous caller to the HPD, and they had stated that his girlfriend named Sherry Lynn Holmes had actually been killed, and her body was found around the windward side of Oahu. Which, how did the caller know that the body was over there? How did they know that the person was dead? How did they know the name? It was just so bizarre to me. I mean, maybe he or she actually stumbled across the body, figured they were going to call the police because it might be related to the whole John Miranda case. But again, it's still extremely bizarre to me. So the Honolulu Police Department, they make the decision to go and travel down to the windward side of Oahu, which, you know, this is where the Marine Corps base is. This is where Kailua, Kaneohe, Waimanalo, Makapu'u, the whole lighthouse hike area, this is where all of that was. So they search this area, and they actually end up finding Sherry's body. Yeah, I mean, how did this person know? It blows my mind. How did this person know that the body was there? Unless they found it, I guess. So, the police then theorized that John had actually killed Sherry before he even went to work to go and perform the whole hostage attack at his former place of work. This, honestly, it's absolutely terrible what happened to Sherry. And it's quite possible that she might have even been in an abusive relationship with John. And maybe this fight caused him to snap as well. And he just went to his job and started holding people hostage. I mean, we don't fully know exactly why he snapped and decided to hold everybody hostage, went completely crazy. But it's also said that Sherry had been murdered by John only 10 days before the whole hostage crisis occurred. And she had ended up being buried in a box and tossed into the local swamp. And they actually had to go through the swamp and search it, like a very thick swamp, and find the box that held her body in it. Like, what in the world? So, what are your guys' thoughts and opinions on this case? Clearly, you know, John was mentally unstable. It's possible he could have been mentally unstable and unhinged prior to the attack, and possibly, you know, after he killed his girlfriend, he wanted to go out, you know, and die as well because he couldn't face the fact that he had done this to her. Or, you know, it could have been a murder-suicide basically thing. So he killed Sherry and then wanted to die by cop suicide, so it would have been a murder-suicide. But, like, what made him seriously go into his former workplace after being fired and hold them all hostage? And this was after he had murdered his girlfriend at the time. Just, it blows my mind how bizarre this whole thing is. And in case y'all didn't know that, the island, Sand Island that he lived on, it does not have a lot of crime like that. Like, that's the first bizarre thing that they've ever heard of. Like, in Hawaii, the most recent case of a bizarre murder like that was the one of Isabella Ariel Kailua. And like I said, this whole thing just blows my mind. And then they had the SWAT team there, and they all had to open fire on him because he wouldn't, you know, give up and refuse. I mean, what if it's possible that, you know, he didn't want to give up and surrender because he knew that he killed his girlfriend, and if he did surrender, you know, it's possible that he could have been charged with her murder and gone to jail for the rest of his life, and that he wanted to die by being shot at by the cops. I mean, that's just all my theories at this point. My mind is literally just like, ugh, blown. I feel like my mind is just mush at this point. So much shit happened. So wild. Just the wildest thing I've ever heard of in my life. Like, just mind blown. So anyways, please let me know what your thoughts are on this case down below in the comments section. Have you guys ever heard of this case before? Do you guys know anything about this case? Have you guys ever watched anything on this case? Have heard anything about this case? If so, let me know down below in the comment section where you heard it from, how you know about it, if you knew anybody involved. Please just let me know. I'm really curious. And let me know what videos and cases and all you guys want to see from me in the future. And until next time, I will see you guys in my next video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that little bell notification so that you never miss a video. And I'll see you guys later.